We celebrate with it, relax with it, and pour it at every social event. Yet, chemically, it is a highly volatile solvent that systematically shuts down your brain's security systems. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're skipping the usual agenda and jumping right into the stark, clinical reality of exactly what happens to your brain and body at a molecular level the second you take a drink.
Ethanol is just so deeply embedded in our social fabric, right? But if we look at it from a purely biochemical perspective, it is actually a psychotropic depressant. When you consume it, it triggers an immediate cascade of acute disruptions, and over time it forces some really intense long-term neuroadaptations right inside your central nervous system.
Let's actually look at the molecule itself for a second. Ethanol is a deceptively simple chain, just 2 carbons and a hydroxyl group. But that specific structure gives it an absolutely perfect hydrophilic and hydrophobic balance. Coupled with its really low molecular weight, this means ethanol doesn't just sit around in your stomach. It has this immense capacity for diffusion. It effortlessly crosses into all your body fluids and tissues, breezes right through the blood-brain barrier, and partitions directly into your nervous system.
Which brings us to a fascinating question. Did you ever realize that the relaxed feeling of the first drink is actually just your brain's brakes being slammed on? You know, it's a super common misconception that alcohol is a stimulant just because it makes people loud or energetic at parties. But clinically, it is a central nervous system depressant. That external euphoria is exclusively a function of chemical disinhibition. To really understand this, we've got to look at the brain's delicate operating system. Think of your neurotransmitters kind of like the pedals in a car. On one side, you have GABA. This is your primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. It's the brakes. It causes sedation and reduces anxiety. And then on the other side, you have glutamate. That's your primary excitatory neurotransmitter, the gas pedal. It's responsible for learning, memory, and your overall cognitive energy. So what happens when ethanol hits these pedals? When ethanol enters the brain, it acts as what we call a positive allosteric modulator on your GABA receptors. Now, it doesn't necessarily bind right where GABA binds. Instead, it attaches to a side door and effectively supercharges the effect that GABA has. It literally slams on the brakes. This immediate inhibition of neural firing falsely mimics relaxation, giving you that classic loss of social inhibition we always associate with intoxication. But wait, ethanol doesn't stop there. At the exact same time, it lifts your foot entirely off the gas. Ethanol inhibits your glutamate receptors, specifically blocking the NMDA and AMPA receptors. This leads to a severe drop in cognitive function. See? Because glutamate is so vital for synaptic plasticity in the hippocampus, this blockade effectively shuts down your brain's ability to form new explicit memories. It's exactly why blackout phenomena occur. You are losing logical reasoning and information storage all at the exact same time. And if we look at the clinical data here, it brilliantly illustrates the wider collateral damage. Ethanol causes broad multi-pathway depression all across the brain. We aren't just talking about GABA and glutamate anymore. It disrupts endocannabinoid receptors, which causes motor incoordination. It alters voltage-dependent calcium channels in the cerebellum. That's what gives you that unsteady stumbling gait. It is a complete, systemic shutdown of multiple neurological pathways simultaneously.
Section 1. The acetaldehyde bottleneck, the metabolic breakdown of ethanol.
So, your liver uses a highly specific set of chemical equations to try neutralize the solvent. First up, an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase, or ADH, oxidizes the ethanol. But here's the kicker. It doesn't make it safer. It actually converts it into a compound called acetaldehyde. Then a second enzyme, aldehyde dehydrogenase, or ALDH2, has to step in to convert that acetaldehyde into acetate, which can eventually be eliminated as water and carbon dioxide.
Now, the really fascinating and frankly alarming part is that middle step. Acetaldehyde is highly toxic. We are talking significantly more harmful and reactive than the ethanol itself. When it starts accumulating in your blood, it acts as a carcinogen and triggers intense physiological reactions. Facial flushing, lightheadedness, nausea, rapid heart rate. Your body's basically being poisoned by the exact byproduct it created to save itself.
And for a lot of people, this metabolic pathway has some serious bottlenecks. A huge percentage of East Asian populations carry the ALDH2/2 genotype. That means their secondary enzyme is functionally inactive. They can't clear that toxic acetaldehyde efficiently, which leads to rapid accumulation, often known as the alcohol flush reaction. Interestingly enough, medical science actually uses this exact mechanism to treat alcoholism. There's a drug called disulfiram that intentionally blocks ALDH2, trapping the body in this highly toxic, nauseating phase to deter further drinking. But hey, Even if you process acetaldehyde efficiently, you still aren't out of the woods. Recent clinical studies show that while acetaldehyde gets cleared out relatively fast, its byproduct, acetate, lingers in your blood for hours at massive millimolar concentrations. This huge buildup of acetate leads to a spike in adenosine, which directly triggers those severe headaches and that inflammatory hypersensitivity we all recognize as the classic hangover.
Section 2. The shift to dependency. Let's look at chronic exposure.
Think about that shifting balance of excitation and inhibition we just talked about. Normally, your brain sits in a nice, happy equilibrium. Short-term alcohol use tilts the seesaw, cranking up inhibition and dropping excitation. But your brain is a survival machine. If you subject it to constant long-term depressant effects, it fights back. It attempts to physically restore equilibrium by drastically cutting down its own inhibitory neurotransmission and cranking up the excitatory side. This right here is the biological definition of tolerance. Chronic exposure literally rewires the hardware of your brain. It downregulates, meaning it physically removes its own GABA receptors because it's just expecting the alcohol to provide that inhibitory effect. At the same time, it enhances glutamate activity. The brain is now operating on a completely new, distorted baseline. Because your natural brakes have basically been uninstalled, you require increasingly higher doses of a toxic solvent just to achieve those initial effects.
And this leads to a truly terrifying biochemical trap. If the alcohol is suddenly removed, your brain is left with massive glutamate excitation and virtually no GABA brakes to stop it. This isn't just uncomfortable, it is a state of highly dangerous hyperexcitation. Your nervous system misfires violently. We're talking profound anxiety, agitation, delirium, and in severe cases, fatal seizures. The withdrawal itself becomes this brutally powerful negative reinforcement that keeps the cycle going.
And beyond just the shifting chemicals, there is objective, physical structural damage happening here. MRI scans and postmortem analyses show that chronic alcohol exposure physically thins out your prefrontal cortex, stripping away your impulse control. It causes widespread neuronal loss in the hippocampus, which devastates your memory capacity. And on top of that, it actually expands the neuronal dendrites in your dorsal striatum, which is the brain's habit formation center. Your brain is literally structurally optimizing itself for compulsive addiction while losing the physical tissue required to make a conscious choice to stop.
Section 3. A chemical caution. The complete journey.
So what begins as a temporary chemical disinhibition, a socially acceptable way to unwind, ultimately rewires the entire neurobiology of the human brain. This continuous cycle of suppressing glutamate, artificially boosting GABA, and flooding the liver with carcinogenic acetaldehyde, it creates a profound, habituated dependence on what is, at its core, a toxic solvent.
The next time you raise a glass to celebrate, maybe ask yourself, are you merely unwinding, or are you chemically hijacking your brain's delicate operating system? If you want to understand the true chemistry of what you put in your body, hit that subscribe button right now.